Mara Layton never meant to draw attention. She'd spent most of her life trying to disappear, closing her shoulders, lowering her voice, keeping her steps quiet like she was afraid the world might shatter if she walked too loudly. But that night at Harborview Bistro, under the warm lights and the Manhattan skyline reflected on the river, she did something she hadn't done in years. She stood up straight. The dinner rush had just begun. Silverware clinked softly, wine glasses glowed against the windows, and Mara moved between tables with her usual gentle rhythm. Then the door opened, and everything in the restaurant shifted. Conversations softened. Heads turned. Even the manager, who rarely noticed anything but customer complaints, straightened his tie. A billionaire had just walked in. Not just any billionaire, Colton Ward, the man whose face lived on every business magazine. The CEO who turned Ward Technologies into one of the most powerful names in the country. He wasn't smiling. He rarely did. His shoulders were tense, suit perfectly pressed, Cartier watch catching the light. But it wasn't him who caught Mara's attention. It was the woman beside him, his mother. Small, elegant, silver hair pinned neatly, eyes soft but distant. And the moment Mara saw her hands still, folded carefully, she recognized something she hadn't seen in a long time. Deaf. Completely. No one moved to greet them. Some guests whispered, others stared. The staff froze, unsure what to do. Mara's heart thudded. She knew that look, the way people examine the world when sound wasn't an option. She had seen it in the woman who used to live next door, the one she learned sign language for when she was 14. Before her manager could bark an order, Mara stepped forward. "Welcome," she said softly, too softly, as always. But then she lifted her hands. "Hello, it's nice to have you here." The mother's eyes widened. Her breath caught. Then slowly, beautifully, she signed back. "You know ASL?" Every head snapped toward Mara. The bartender stopped pouring wine. A couple at table 7 gasped. Colton himself froze mid-step, confusion flashing across his face as he watched the quiet waitress communicate with his mother more warmly than most people ever had. Mara didn't notice the silence around her. For the first time all day, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel invisible. She just felt useful. The mother smiled a real bright smile that softened every line of her face. Colton swallowed hard, as if he didn't know what to do with the unexpected warmth rising in his chest. And that was the exact second Mara's manager rushed forward, grabbing her elbow and whispering sharply, "What do you think you're doing? Stay in your lane, Mara!" His fingers dug into her arm. The restaurant watched. Colton's expression darkened, and Mara suddenly realized tonight wouldn't just change her shift. It was about to change her life, in ways she wasn't ready for, in ways no one could predict. Colton Ward wasn't a man easily surprised. Not by markets. Not by people. Not by anything in a world he'd spent years controlling with numbers, silence, and unshakable discipline. But as he watched the shy waitress slip her arm from the manager's grip and sign gently to his mother again, something in him shifted. His mother hadn't smiled like that in months. Mara cleared her throat softly, as if apologizing for even existing, and motioned toward an open booth near the window. Colton helped his mother sit, but his eyes never left Mara. There was something familiar about the kindness in her hands, something rare, something money couldn't buy and power couldn't imitate. Mara placed 2 menus down, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please let me know if she prefers signing or writing." "She prefers signing," Colton answered, his tone low, unreadable. "Most people can't." Mara nodded, looking at Joanna with gentle respect, not pity. "I'm happy to help." Colton caught the way her lashes lowered quickly, as if afraid she'd said too much. She didn't flirt. She didn't perform. She simply cared. That alone made her stand out in a world where everyone wanted something from him. Across the room, whispers grew sharp. Is she talking to his mom? Who is that waitress? Watch is totally looking at her. Mara felt the scrutiny, like heat on her back. Her chest tightened, breath shallower, hands slightly trembling, the old panic creeping in. She hated being watched, hated being noticed. People's eyes had never been kind to her growing up. She turned to step away, desperate to disappear again, but Colton's voice stopped her. "What's your name?" She froze. Slowly, she faced him. "Mara. Mara Layton." His gaze swept over her, not in the way men at bars looked at pretty girls, but in a way that unnerved her more. Analytical, searching, curious. As if she were a puzzle he somehow already needed to solve. "That was impressive, Mara," he said quietly. "Most people don't approach my mother. They're intimidated." She gave a tiny, awkward smile. "People don't scare me. Only attention does." His mother laughed silently, signing toward him. "She's good for you." Colton blinked, caught off guard. Mara didn't see what Joanna signed, but she saw the way his eyes softened. And for the first time, Mara wondered if she had just stepped into a world she was never meant to touch. Victoria Hart spotted the tension the moment she stepped into Harborview Bistro. She had come only to deliver documents to Colton before tomorrow's board meeting, but the sight in front of her stopped her cold. Colton Ward, the untouchable billionaire, watching a waitress like she was the only source of oxygen in the room. Victoria's stomach twisted. She knew that look. She'd spent years working beside him, studying his rhythms, his silences, the rare softening of his features when he let his guard drop with people he trusted. But this wasn't softening. This was attention, focus, interest, all directed at a girl wearing a faded apron and shoes that had clearly survived too many double shifts. Mara. Victoria didn't like the name. As Mara walked toward the kitchen, head lowered again, Victoria intercepted her path like a blade sliding quietly into place. "You must be new," Victoria said, voice sugar over steel. Mara blinked. "No, Ma, am. Ivy worked here a while." "How cute." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Do you always approach high-profile guests without instruction?" Mara stiffened, already shrinking inside herself. His mother needed someone who could sign. "I didn't mean, oh, sweetheart," Victoria interrupted softly, leaning closer. "Women like you don't get near families like his. It's not how this world works." The words sliced deep too easily, because they echoed things Mara had heard her whole life. Behind them, Colton's voice cut through the air. "Victoria! Enough!" Victoria straightened instantly, schooling her expression back into polite professionalism. "Just reminding your staff about boundaries." "She's not my staff," Colton replied, eyes cold, "and she acted appropriately." Those two sentences flipped something inside Victoria, a quiet, burning humiliation. She shifted tactics. "Look, Colton, the optics matter. The last thing you need is the media catching a picture of you getting distracted, especially before the board vote." Mara felt heat rush to her cheeks, but Colton didn't look away from Victoria. "My personal interactions aren't your concern." "Of course," Victoria murmured, mask sliding into place. "But the girl should watch her step. This isn't a fairy tale." Victoria walked off, heels clicking sharply, leaving the threat hanging in the air like smoke. Mara exhaled shakily, realizing she had just made her first powerful enemy, one who played in a world where she had no armor. And somewhere deep down, a fear sparked. She wasn't just noticed now. She was targeted. Mara finished her shift with a tightness in her chest that made it hard to breathe. Victoria's words lingered like smoke, sharp, poisonous, sticking to the inside of her ribs. She told herself it didn't matter. People like Victoria always said things like that to people like her. She'd learned to swallow the hurt a long time ago, but tonight it stung deeper. Maybe because someone had finally noticed her, and someone else immediately tried to take that small moment away. She stepped out the back door of the restaurant, pulling her thin jacket tighter against the river breeze. She planned to walk straight home, head down, invisible as always. But a familiar voice stopped her before she reached the sidewalk. "Mara!" She turned. Colton Ward stood under the lamppost, hands in his coat pockets, Maybach idling behind him. He looked out of place in the quiet street, too polished, too powerful, Too much of everything she wasn't. "I didn't mean to make your night harder," he said. "You didn't," she answered quickly, though it wasn't entirely true. Colton motioned toward the water. "Walk with me? Just for a minute?" She hesitated. Every instinct told her to run from anything that drew attention, especially from a man whose world could swallow her whole. But something in his expression, tired, sincere, almost human, softened her fear. So she nodded. They walked along the East River path, the Manhattan skyline glowing like a city made of diamonds. Mara kept her gaze ahead, not knowing what to say, painfully aware of the quiet between them. "You handled my mother beautifully," Colton said after a moment. "She doesn't connect with many people." "She's very kind," Mara murmured. "Her signing is beautiful." He glanced at her, surprised. "Most people don't even try to understand her." Mara shrugged gently. Hearing or not, people just want to be seen. The simplicity of her words hit him harder than she knew. He stopped walking. She turned to face him, unsure. "What Victoria said earlier," Colton began. "Don't let it get inside your head. She guards my image too aggressively, and she crosses lines." Mara looked away. She wasn't wrong. Your world and mine don't exactly mix. "Maybe they don't," he admitted quietly. "But that doesn't mean you deserved what she said." The wind tugged at her hair. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Mara whispered, barely audible, "I don't want trouble, Mr. Ward." He held her gaze, voice low, certain. "Trouble isn't you, Mara, not tonight." But the universe was already preparing to prove him wrong. Mara didn't expect to see Colton Ward again. Men like him lived in penthouses above clouds, behind mirrored boardrooms and private elevators. Whatever happened last night by the river was a moment, nothing more. A kindness she'd remember quietly and never speak of again. So when her manager shoved a tablet into her hands the next afternoon, she nearly dropped it. "You," he snapped, "have been personally requested to deliver lunch to Ward Technologies. Don't embarrass us." Her stomach dropped. "Requested by who?" He rolled his eyes. "By the man who owns half this city. Don't make me repeat myself." 10 minutes later, she stood outside a glass tower on Park Avenue, clutching a takeout bag like it was a life raft. Everything about the building was too much, too tall, too clean, too polished. She felt like a scratch on a diamond. Security escorted her up 42 floors. The elevator doors opened to a hallway lined with artwork worth more than her apartment. Employees in suits glanced at her, curious, dismissive, some whispering. She pulled her jacket tight, wishing she could vanish into the walls. A receptionist led her into a meeting room. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. And at the head of a long table stood Colton. He wasn't in a suit this time. His sleeves were rolled up, shirt open at the collar, as if he'd been immersed in work. But when he saw her, really saw her, his expression softened in a way that made her throat tighten. "Mara," he said quietly, "you came." "As requested," she murmured, setting the lunch down and stepping back quickly, keeping distance like it might protect her. "You didn't have to rush over," he added. "I only wanted to thank you properly for last night." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." His mother entered then, Joanna, smiling when she recognized Mara. She signed warmly, "Thank you for being kind. You reminded me of someone I once knew." Mara's breath caught, though she didn't understand why those words hit so hard. Colton watched her reaction closely, like he was studying a code he couldn't quite decipher. One of the board members walked past the door, paused, and frowned at the sight of the waitress in their CEO's private space. The judgment in his eyes was immediate, and Mara realized something chilling. By stepping into this building, she hadn't just entered Colton's world. She had stepped straight into his battlefield. Victoria Hart was good at two things: controlling a narrative and destroying a threat before it grew teeth. And today, as she watched Mara step out of the elevator in Ward Technologies, she realized the girl was no longer a harmless distraction. She was becoming leverage, and leverage in the wrong hands could ruin everything. Victoria waited until Mara left the building before slipping into Colton's office. She placed a file on his desk, clean, crisp, and calculated. "What's this?" Colton asked without looking up from his laptop. "A concern," Victoria replied smoothly. "Regarding the waitress." He lifted his eyes. Sharp. Irritated. "Victoria, we've already discussed this." "But you haven't seen the documents," she interrupted softly, sliding the folder closer. Her mother was once part of a medical trial funded by Ward Technologies. A failed one. Colton paused. Just for a second. But it was enough for Victoria to continue. She signed a consent form before her death, a form that gave researchers access to private data. And if the press finds out you're getting close to her daughter, Victoria let the implication hang. They'll say you're compensating for corporate guilt. Colton leaned back, jaw tightening. "Why bring this to me now?" "Because the girl clearly wants something," Victoria said, voice smooth as glass. "Look at the timing. Her mother passes away, she discovers a connection to our company, and suddenly she inserts herself into your life." Colton's reaction was unreadable, but the flicker of doubt in his eyes was real, small, but there. Exactly what Victoria wanted. She pressed deeper. I checked further. Her apartment is months behind on rent. Her brother is struggling in school. She's drowning in medical debt. People in desperation do desperate things. Colton closed the folder, jaw tense. "Enough. I'm only protecting you," she whispered. "You're manipulating a situation you know nothing about." Victoria pretended to retreat, masking her satisfaction. "As you wish. But if this becomes a scandal, the board won't be gentle." She left the office, heels clicking like a countdown. Meanwhile, Mara walked down Park Avenue, feeling the weight of something she couldn't name, like a storm forming behind her, quiet but deadly. At the same time, in a locked archive room 3 floors below, a technician opened an email he believed came from Colton's office. It didn't. It was from Victoria. And attached was a fabricated set of record zones that, once uploaded, would make Mara look like a girl with secrets sharp enough to cut through a billionaire's empire. The night of the Plaza Gala was supposed to be elegant, polished, untouchable, everything Mara wanted. She had never stepped inside a place like this. Chandeliers dripping light, marble floors gleaming like water, the Manhattan elite drifting through the room in gowns worth more than her yearly income. She clutched the simple black dress Colton's assistant had dropped off for her, still unsure why she had even been invited. Colton met her at the entrance, adjusting his cufflinks, eyes softening the instant he saw her. "You made it." "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You absolutely should." Joanna signed a warm greeting beside him, but Mara barely saw it. The room pressed in on her, the whispers, the cameras, the stares. People recognized Colton everywhere, which meant they noticed her too. A waitress in a borrowed dress, walking beside a billionaire. That was all it took for judgment to bloom like wildfire. "Who is she? Ward must be bored. She looks cheap." Colton noticed her tension. Ignore them. But she couldn't. She'd spent her whole life surviving on invisibility. This sudden exposure felt like drowning. Still, she tried. For him. But across the room, a spark of silver caught her eye. Evil in heart, gliding through the crowd like a serpent wrapped in glamour. She reached a reporter first, leaned in, and whispered something behind her champagne glass. The reporter's brows shot up. Then another whisper to a passing board member. Then another. Mara felt it like a shift in the air. Something had been released. Minutes later, a screen near the stage flickered on for the charity presentation. A slideshow began. But halfway through, an image appeared that shouldn't have been there. Mara's mother's medical form. Her name. Ward Technologies. The failed trial. Gasps rippled. Murmurs sharpened into accusations. Is that the waitress? Her mother sued the company, didn't she? Is she using the CEO to get a settlement? Mara's blood ran cold. Colton stepped toward the screen, fury igniting. Turn that off, now! But it was too late. Eyes were already cutting toward Mara's eyes, filled with suspicion, disdain, certainty that she had orchestrated everything. I didn't do this, she said, voice breaking. I know, Colton answered, but something uncertain flickered in his expression, small but devastating. It wasn't anger. It was doubt. And doubt, she knew, could destroy more than hatred ever could. The ballroom at the plaza was still buzzing with fractured whispers when Mara stepped back, trembling so hard she could barely stand. The screen had gone dark, but its damage lingered in every pair of eyes, drilling into her, questioning, judging, assuming the worst. She felt exposed, stripped bare, as if her mother's memory had just been dragged across marble floors for strangers to trample. Colton reached for her arm, but she pulled back instinctively. Mara, wait, I didn't do this, she said, voice cracking like thin ice. I would never use my mother like that. His expression tightened, not cold but conflicted, as if two truths were battling inside him. I know you wouldn't, but the timing someone clearly planted those files. She swallowed hard. You think that someone might be me? He didn't answer, and silence, in that moment, felt worse than accusation. Joanna watched the exchange, signing urgently to her son, but he wasn't looking. He was staring at Mara as if trying to solve an equation with half the variables missing. His entire life had been built on caution. Betrayal had shaped him more than love ever had. And now that old wound, raw and ugly, clouded his judgment. A group of board members approached, eyes sharp. Colton, this is a serious breach, one said. If she had access to internal documents, she didn't, Colton snapped, but not with full conviction. Mara's heart splintered. Another whispered, the press is already asking questions. We need to contain this before it becomes a lawsuit. The word lawsuit hit her like a slap. Her family had suffered enough. Her mother's name, her memory, wasn't something Mara could bear to see twisted into corporate warfare. I should go, she said. I'm making things worse. Colton stepped toward her. No. We can fix this. Just give me time to figure out what happened. Time. Time she didn't have. Time he wasn't sure he wanted to give. She took a shaky step back. I don't belong in your world. I never did. Mara. But she was already turning away, slipping through the crowd like a ghost, letting the whispers swallow her whole. Joanna reached out a hand, calling to her in silent urgency, but Mara didn't see it. She didn't see Colton's face fall, or the way he clenched his fists like a man losing something he didn't yet understand he needed. All she felt was the cold truth. For the first time since meeting him, Colton doubted her, and doubt could break her heart faster than any lie. By the time Mara reached the subway station, the night had turned cold enough to sting. She stood on the platform clutching the railing, trying to steady her breath, but nothing stopped the shaking in her hands. The humiliation at the gala replayed again and again, the screen, the whispers, Colton's flicker of doubt. She had survived poverty, grief, and years of being overlooked. But being doubted by the one person who'd made her feel seen, that cut deeper than she expected. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it at first until it buzzed again, harder, insistent. When she finally pulled it out, her stomach dropped Colton's name on the screen. For a second, she considered not answering, but something in her chest wouldn't let her. Hello? She whispered. Mara, where are you? His voice was sharp, urgent, nothing like before. It's my mother. She collapsed. Her breath hitched. What? How? I don't know. One moment she was fine. The next she... His voice cracked. The sound of a man losing his anchor. She's asking for you. In sign. In sign. Her heart jolted. I'm coming, she said, already running up the station steps. 15 minutes later, she burst through the sliding doors of Mount Sinai Hospital. Colton stood in the hallway, shoulders taut, fear twisting his expression into something raw and unguarded. Doctors moved past him. Nurses whispered updates he barely heard. When he saw Mara, he exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. Thank you for coming, he said, voice low. Where is she? He led her to a dim room where Joanna lay hooked to monitors, her face pale, her hands trembling weakly. When she saw Mara, her eyes filled with relief. She lifted her fingers with effort. "Can you stay? I'm scared." Mara moved to her side instantly, taking her hand gently. "You're safe. I'm here." Joanna's breathing steadied the moment Mara signed those words. Even the nurse noticed. "Her heart rate is responding to her," she murmured quietly to Colton. Colton watched Mara, really watched her, like something inside him was breaking open. The doubt he held at the gala began dissolving, replaced by something heavier. Guilt. "Mara," he whispered, "I think someone did this. To her. On purpose." She froze. Why would anyone? His jaw tightened. "Because someone wants to destroy everything around me, including you." And for the first time, Mara realized that whatever she had stepped into, it wasn't just complicated. It was dangerous. The morning after Joanna's collapse, Mara woke to pounding on her apartment door, fists slamming hard enough to rattle the hinges. Her brother startled awake, eyes wide with fear. She wrapped an arm around him before opening the door a crack. A swarm of reporters exploded into the hallway like a storm. "There she is. Miss Layton, did you poison Joanna Ward? Are you involved in the medical trial cover-up? Did you target the Ward family for financial gain?" Flashbulbs blinded her, microphones shoved toward her face. Her brother clung to her shirt as panic clawed up her throat. I didn't, please stop." But the questions didn't stop. They sharpened. A woman shoved forward with a tablet. "We have leaked files showing your mother's trial. Data was accessed using your credentials last week. Care to explain?" Mara froze. "My credentials? I didn't even know. Is that why you got close to Colton Ward? To blackmail him?" Her knees buckled. The landlord suddenly appeared, shouting over the chaos. "Miss Layton, you're 3 months behind on rent. If this mess brings trouble here, I'm evicting you today." Her brother began to cry. Mara pulled him close, shielding him from the cameras, her heart cracking under the weight of accusations she didn't understand. Then her phone rang. "Colton." She hesitated before answering. "Colton, what's happening? Why are they saying Mara?" he said, voice tight, controlled. The way he sounded when he was forcing himself not to break. "The board received an anonymous packet this morning. It includes documents implicating you in corporate theft." Her breath hitched. "That's impossible." "I know," he said, but there was strain in his tone, a fracture she could hear. "But the evidence looks convincing." Convincing. The word stabbed straight through her. "Do you believe it?" she whispered. Silence. A beat. Another. "I don't know what to believe right now," he finally said. Her world collapsed. Before she could respond, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. The door swung open, and Victoria Hart stepped out in sunglasses and a tailored coat, smiling like a wolf. "Poor Mara," she said loudly, "for the cameras. It seems the truth always finds its way out." Mara stared at her, realization dawning like ice spreading across glass. Victoria had orchestrated everything, every rumor, every leak, every attack. And now, Mara understood the brutal truth. This wasn't just a PR war. It was an execution. By late afternoon, Mara's world had shrunk to a single suffocating truth. She had nowhere left to stand. After the reporters finally dispersed, the hallway looked like a battlefield. Flyers on the floor, her brother shaking uncontrollably, the landlord glaring at her like she was a stain he wanted gone. "You have until tonight," he said. "Pack your things. This building doesn't need police or paparazzi. I want you out." Her throat tightened. "Please, just one more week." "No more excuses," he snapped, slamming his door. Her brother, Liam, tugged her sleeve, voice trembling. "Mara, where are we going?" She didn't know. She had never not known before. She had always found a way, patched holes, worked extra shifts, stretched pennies into meals. But now, even breathing felt like trying to swallow broken glass. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she didn't want to answer, but the screen lit with the hospital's number. She stepped into her bathroom, closed the door, and forced herself to pick up. "Miss Layton," the nurse said softly, "your brother's anxiety medication wasn't renewed this month. We can't keep supplying emergency doses without payment." Mara pressed a hand to her eyes. "I'll figure something out. Please just don't let him go without it." "I'll try," the nurse whispered, then hung up. When Mara returned to the living room, Liam sat curled on the couch, backpack clutched to his chest. A single Amazon box, the last package their mother had ordered before she died, sat beside him. He kept it close, like it was the only stable thing left. "I'm sorry," she whispered, kneeling in front of him. "I'm so sorry." Liam's voice cracked. "Did you do something bad?" "No," she said, pulling him into her arms, "but people want to believe I did." That was the moment the power went out. Not the building, just their unit. A final blow from the universe. Unpaid bill. Darkness swallowed them whole. Mara stood slowly, staring out the window at a world that kept moving without her. Somewhere across the river, Colton Ward sat in penthouses and boardrooms, debating whether she was a threat or a liar. She wiped her face and began packing their belongings into trash bags. Clothes, old textbooks, the fading picture of their mother. Everything smelled like defeat. When she opened the fridge, only 2 items remained: a half-empty carton of milk and a takeout container from a shift she'd worked 3 nights ago. Nothing else. Hunger tightened her stomach. Fear tightened everything else. Tonight, she and Liam would be homeless. And as she looked at the last of their belongings, Mara realized something devastating. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure she had the strength to keep fighting. Colton Ward hadn't slept. He sat alone in his penthouse office, Manhattan glowing beneath him like a city on fire. His mother's collapse, Mara's humiliation, the reporters, the evidence packet, the board's pressure. It formed a storm so thick he could barely think. But worst of all was the look on Mara's face when he hesitated at the gala. Hesitation that cut her deeper than any accusation. He rubbed his forehead, frustrated with himself. He'd spent years trusting no one, building walls so high, even loyalty couldn't climb them. But last night, when his mother reached for Mara, in fear those walls cracked. His phone lit up. Security report, unauthorized data modification. Colton opened it. His pulse spiked. A technician had flagged unusual activity. Someone logged into the internal archive using a mirrored access code. His code. Except it wasn't his. The signature was artificial, masked, hacked. He leaned forward, scanning lines of metadata. The mirrored access originated not from Mara's neighborhood, not from any public Wi-Fi, but from the 27th floor of Ward Technologies, the PR department, Victoria. His jaw tightened. Another notification appeared. Hospital alert Joanna Ward status update. He bolted out of his chair. At Mount Sinai, he found his mother resting, eyes closed, breathing steadier. When he took her hand, she stirred and signed slowly, weakly. Find the truth. Protect the girl. You're blind, not her. His throat tightened. Mom, did someone do this to you? Did someone cause it? She blinked once. Deliberate. Yes. A cold realization spread through him. Someone had targeted Mara. Someone had targeted his mother, and he'd let doubt poison his judgment. He stood abruptly. Colton? The nurse asked. I need security footage, he said. All hospital entries from the night of the gala and full access logs from my building. Is something wrong, sir? Yes, he answered. Everything. He didn't tell her that he already suspected who was behind it, or that he planned to uncover every lie, every forged document, every planted rumor. He didn't tell her he feared he might lose Mara before he could make this right. But as he left the hospital, determination replaced every shred of doubt. Mara had been fighting alone. Now it was his turn, and he would burn down anyone who tried to break her. Ward Technologies' 42nd floor boardroom had hosted million-dollar negotiations, hostile takeovers, and crisis management meetings, but never a storm like the one gathering behind Colton Ward's eyes as he stepped inside. Victoria Hart stood at the end of the long table, perfectly composed in a navy suit, flipping casually through a stack of printed reports. Her expression brightened when she saw him. Colton. I was just preparing statements for the press. Given the situation with the waitress, he slammed the access log reports onto the table so hard the board members flinched. "Stop talking." Victoria's smile tightened. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." The room went still. Colton's voice was low, controlled, but vibrating with something lethal. "You've been busy, haven't you?" Anonymous packets to the board, leaked documents, manufactured connections between Mara and my mother's medical trial. Victoria gave a careful laugh. "Colton, you can't seriously think I have proof." He threw the mirrored access printout toward her. "The data breach came from your department. At the exact hour the fake trial files were uploaded." Her jaw twitched, but she maintained her mask. "My entire team has access. Anyone could have." "And the hospital footage?" He cut in. "The person who entered my mother's room minutes before her collapse was wearing a PR department badge." A ripple of shock shot through the board. Victoria's voice iced over. "Are you accusing me of harming your mother?" "I'm stating facts," he said. "Facts you can't spin." She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You're letting that girl cloud your judgment. She is a liability. I was protecting you, protecting this company." By destroying her life? His control fractured. By making her homeless? Terrifying her brother? Parading lies in front of the press? "She doesn't belong in your world." Victoria snapped, the veneer cracking. "You were slipping, Colton. Becoming weak. Someone had to keep you focused." He stared at her, stunned for the first time, seeing the truth behind her ambition. "You don't want to protect me," he said quietly. "You want to own me." Her face drained of color. "And you'll burn anyone I care about to make that happen." Victoria's breath faltered. The board members whispered in alarm. Colton straightened, voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Effective immediately. You are suspended. Security will escort you out." Victoria's eyes blazed with hatred, not fear. "This isn't over, Colton. That girl will cost you everything." He stepped closer, gaze cold as winter. "No," he said. "You almost did." Joanna Ward woke to the sound of distant arguing soft, muffled, like thunder rolling behind a closed door. Her vision was still blurry, but the moment she recognized the silhouette sitting beside her hospital bed, her heart steadied. Mara. The girl was curled in a plastic chair, arms wrapped around herself, exhausted eyes staring at the floor. She looked like someone who had been fighting a war alone. Joanna lifted a trembling hand. "Mara!" The waitress startled awake. Then relief washed over her so quickly she nearly cried. "You're okay," Mara signed gently. Joanna shook her head. "No, not okay. Much danger." Before Mara could respond, the door slid open. Colton stepped in, shoulders tense, regret heavy in his expression. He stopped when he saw Mara sitting beside his mother, like she belonged there. "Mara," he began, voice low. "I need to talk to you." Mara stood quickly, wiping her cheeks. "If it's about the evidence, it's fake," he said. "All of it. Victoria manipulated everything." Her breath caught, but Joanna lifted both hands sharply, demanding their attention. "Enough. Both of you. Sit." They obeyed. With effort, Joanna began signing slow but passionate. "The girl is innocent. I know her heart." Mara blinked, confused. "Mrs. Ward, you barely know me." Joanna shook her head again, motioning for her to come closer. When Mara leaned in, Joanna touched her cheek, gentle, deliberate. "You were kind to me once." "Long ago." Colton frowned. "Mom, what do you mean?" Joanna turned to him, eyes shining with painful clarity. "When you were a boy, we were in a car accident. A woman pulled me out. Her daughter held my hand while she cried for help." Mara froze. "My mother?" Joanna nodded. "She saved my life." And her little girl Joanna pointed to Mara's trembling hands, knew sign language even then. Memories flashed through Mara's mind. Muddy shoes, flashing lights, her mother's voice shaking as she held a stranger's face and told her she was safe. Colton looked between them, stunned. "You're saying Mara's mother saved you?" Joanna's eyes filled with tears. "She saved me. And now someone is trying to hurt her daughter. Find who did this. Protect her. Mara broke, covering her mouth as tears spilled freely. Colton felt something inside him crack open, guilt, awe, something dangerously close to devotion. In that small, dim hospital room, the truth rose like a tidal wave. Mara hadn't just entered his life by accident. She had been part of his story long before either of them ever knew. Rain soaked through Mara's thin jacket as she and Liam sat in the back of a rideshare, bags stuffed at their feet. Everything they owned reduced to 4 plastic sacks and an old Amazon box their mother left behind. The driver dropped them at a cheap motel on the outskirts of Brooklyn, the kind with flickering neon signs and doors that didn't fully lock. Mara didn't care. She had nowhere else to go. Liam curled on the bed immediately, exhausted from fear more than fatigue. Mara stroked his hair until he fell asleep, then stepped outside into the hallway, letting the rain hit her face. She didn't cry. She had moved past crying into a numbness so deep it felt hollow. A car engine approached smooth, expensive, unmistakable. Mara's chest tightened. No, please, not now. The Maybach stopped in front of the motel. Colton stepped out, rain plastering his hair to his forehead, his dress shirt damp at the collar. He looked nothing like the billionaire who commanded boardrooms. He looked desperate. Mara, he called softly. She backed away. You shouldn't be here. I had to come. For what? Her voice cracked. To tell me you doubt me again? To watch the mess my life has become? No. He took a slow step toward her. To apologize. To explain. To everything. She turned her face away. Colton, I lost my home, my job, my safety. People think I hurt your mother. They think I tried to steal from your company. My brother is terrified. My life is in pieces. And I'm responsible, he said, voice breaking. I should have protected you. I should have believed in you from the beginning. Rain dripped from her lashes. Why didn't you? His answer was quiet, painful. Because I've spent my whole life expecting betrayal. I didn't know how to let someone in without destroying them. She pressed a hand to her chest, fighting the ache. Well, you succeeded. Colton inhaled sharply, wounded. Give me a chance to fix this. I found the proof, Mara. Real proof. Victoria isn't just manipulating things. She's dangerous. She targeted you. She targeted my mother. She set all of this up. I know, Mara whispered. Joanna told me. He froze. Then you know you're not alone anymore. She shook her head. I'm tired, Colton. I don't know if I have anything left to give. He stepped closer, voice almost a plea. Then let me carry the weight. Let me fix what was broken starting with us. For the first time since everything shattered, Mara looked directly at him. And for one fragile second, she wanted to believe him. Ward Technologies shook the next morning, not from rumors, but from the undeniable, unstoppable force of evidence Colton had gathered overnight. He arrived at headquarters before sunrise, flanked by 2 members of his private security team, a sealed folder under his arm. No more hesitation, no more doubt. The board was already assembled, faces tight, awaiting an explanation for the chaos consuming the company. Victoria stood at the head of the table, perfectly groomed, perfectly confident, until she saw the folder in Colton's hand. Colton, she said sharply, before you begin, we need to address the PR catastrophe related to the girl. The safest move is to release a statement distancing. He cut her off. Sit down, Victoria. A hush rolled across the room. Colton placed the folder on the table and opened it with slow precision. Screenshots, metadata logs, security footage, hospital entry records, everything arranged like a prosecutor preparing for trial. He looked directly at her. You forged documents tying Mara to my mother's trial. You manufactured evidence of data theft. You anonymously contacted the press, and you entered my mother's hospital room the night she collapsed. A collective gasp rippled through the board. Victoria didn't blink, didn't flinch. This is absurd, fabricated. You're willing to believe a waitress over me? Colton pressed a button on the conference screen. Hospital surveillance footage filled the room. A woman in a PR badge slipping into Joanna's room. The figure turned slightly enough for the camera to catch the glint of her bracelet. Victoria's bracelet. Her face drained of color. Colton spoke quietly, almost gently, but the softness only made the words sharper. "You poisoned my mother." "It wasn't poison," Victoria snapped, panic breaking through her mask. Just a mild sedative she wasn't supposed to react like. She stopped herself too late. The board erupted. One member stood, furious. "You endangered the family that built this company." Another added, "She targeted the CEO. This is criminal." Security guards appeared at the doorway. Victoria's confidence shattered. "Colton, please. Everything I did was for you. For us. She doesn't belong in your world." "No," he said, stepping back. "You don't." As security escorted her out, she twisted toward him one last time, eyes venomous. "You think saving that girl will fix you? She'll destroy you." Colton didn't answer. He simply turned away. Because for the first time in years, he finally knew who the real threat was. The motel room was quiet the next morning, sunlight leaking through thin curtains, turning the cheap carpet a muted gold. Mara sat on the edge of the bed, watching Liam eat cereal from a plastic cup. His eyes looked tired older than a 14-year-old should ever look. She hated that he had to see her fall apart. A soft knock sounded at the door. Mara stiffened instantly, pulling Liam behind her. But when she opened it, she found not reporters or officers Colton. He looked different today, not polished, not composed, human. A man who had spent the night choosing which parts of his world to burn down, just so he could start rebuilding the right ones. "Mara," he said softly, "can we talk?" She stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "You shouldn't be here." "I don't care," he replied. "Your brother deserves safety. You deserve safety." She folded her arms, trying to shield herself. "Safety doesn't come from apologies." "No," he admitted. "It comes from action." He handed her a folder thin but heavy with meaning. Inside were documents, proof of her innocence, hospital reports clearing her name, and a statement prepared for the media. "I'm going public today," he said. "I'm telling them everything Victoria did. I'm telling them you're not the villain they painted you to be." She swallowed hard. "And what if they don't believe you?" "They will," he said, "because I'm not just speaking as a CEO. I'm speaking as a man who failed someone who deserved better." The words stunned her. He wasn't talking like a billionaire now. He wasn't speaking from a place of power. He was speaking from remorse. Colton continued gently. "There's more. I talked to the Children's Mental Health Foundation. Liam can get treatment, real treatment, privately, safely, covered by my personal fund." Her breath caught. "Why would you do that?" "Because your mother saved mine," he said, "and because you saved her again. I owe your family more than you know." Mara looked away, overwhelmed. "I don't want charity." "It isn't charity," he said softly. "It's gratitude, and it's the beginning of making things right." For the first time in days, the crushing weight pressing on Mara's chest loosened just enough for her to breathe without breaking. And standing there in a run-down motel hallway, with rain-washed streets below them, and the distant hum of Brooklyn waking up, something shifted. Her healing didn't start with safety. It started with being believed. 2 days later, Mara found herself standing outside Harborview Bistro, the place where everything had begun, where a simple greeting in sign language had unraveled her entire life. The restaurant looked the same. Warm lights, wooden awnings, the East River glittering softly behind it. But she didn't feel the same. Too much had broken. Too much had changed. She hesitated at the entrance. Part of her wanted to run, to avoid the memories, the whispers, the manager who had grabbed her arm that night. But another part of her, quieter, braver, knew she needed to reclaim something she'd lost before the world took it all. Inside, the lunch crowd was small. Employees froze when they saw her. A couple at table 4 whispered, The bartender looked away awkwardly. Mara's pulse quickened, but she kept walking, head high, even though her knees trembled. The manager stormed toward her. "You can't be here after everything you dragged us into," before he finished. A calm, solid voice came from the back corner. "She has every right to be here." Mara turned. Colton sat in the booth where he and his mother had first met her. No security, no assistant, no distance. Just him, hands folded, eyes soft, as if he'd been waiting. The manager paled. "Mr. Ward, sir, I didn't realize—" "You didn't have to." Colton's tone was quiet but deadly. "But you will not speak to her like that again?" The manager stepped back immediately. Colton motioned for Mara to join him. She approached slowly, cautiously, lowering herself into the seat across from him. The sunlight from the river reflected through the window, dancing gently across his face. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure either," she admitted. "This place, it reminds me of who I used to be." "And who is that?" he asked gently. She looked at the table, fingers tracing the worn wood. "A girl who stayed small, so the world wouldn't crush her." Colton leaned forward. "You're not that girl anymore." She met his gaze, then steady, searching. He continued, voice softer. "I returned here because I realized something. This wasn't just where I met you. It's where I saw you, truly saw you, before lies twisted everything." A tightness rose in her throat. He added, "If you want to leave this place behind, I'll walk with you. If you want to reclaim it, I'll stand beside you." Mara inhaled shakily. For the first time, the River Cafe didn't feel like the beginning of a downfall. It felt like the beginning of a choice. Mara didn't expect to see Joanna Ward at the River Cafe. She thought the older woman would still be resting, recovering from everything Victoria had put her through. But as the afternoon sun lowered over the East River, the restaurant door opened, and there she was. Joanna stood between two nurses, fragile but determined, her silver hair neatly pulled back, her eyes bright with purpose. Colton immediately rose to help her, but Joanna waved him off, insisting she could walk on her own. Her gaze searched the room until it settled on Mara. A soft warmth touched her features. Mara stood quickly, unsure if she should approach. Joanna made the decision for her. She moved forward, slow but steady, and reached for Mara's hands. The entire restaurant quieted. Even the customers who didn't know who the elegant older woman was could feel the weight of the moment. Joanna squeezed Mara's fingers, then lifted her hands to sign. "You saved me, twice." Mara's eyes filled. "I only did what anyone would do." "No." Joanna shook her head firmly. "Not anyone. You." The sincerity in those gestures broke open something deep inside Mara, something she had held tight for years, buried beneath survival and fear and loss. Joanna continued, her movements delicate but full of conviction. "My husband died before Colton was born. I raised him with silence as my world. That silence was never a weakness, but loneliness was. You understand that loneliness. You carry it with grace." Mara felt tears spill down her cheeks. Joanna's expression softened further. She brushed Mara's cheek with the back of her hand, then signed the words that changed everything. "You are family to us, if you choose to be." The room seemed to exhale. Colton watched, stunned, emotion tightening his throat. He had never seen his mother give such an intimate blessing, not in decades, not to anyone. Mara shook her head in disbelief. "Mrs. Ward, I don't deserve that." Joanna smiled, lifting a finger gently to Mara's lips. "You deserve love. Real love. You always did." Then she took Mara's hand and placed it into Colton's deliberate, symbolic, irrefutable. Colton looked down at their joined hands, then at Mara, his voice barely more than a whisper. "She's right. You're not alone anymore." For the first time in her life, Mara felt it. Belonging. Not earned through perfection, not offered out of pity, but given freely because she was enough. That evening, after the River Cafe had emptied and the last light faded across the East River, Colton guided Mara outside to the waterfront walkway, the same place where they'd taken their first quiet steps together. The Manhattan skyline shimmered in the distance, steady and breathtaking, like a promise made of steel and light. The wind carried the soft scent of river air as they stopped beside the railing. Mara hugged her arms, not from cold, but from the overwhelming uncertainty pressing on her chest. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked softly. "Because this is where everything started," Colton said. "Where I first saw you. Not just a waitress, not just someone passing through my life, but someone I couldn't forget." Mara looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "My life is still a mess, Colton. I don't even know where I'm supposed to go after tonight." "You can come with me," he said simply. Her breath caught. "I'm not someone who fits into your world." He stepped closer, gently lifting her chin so she would meet his eyes. "I don't want the world I had before. I want the one I'm building now, with truth, with courage, with someone who isn't afraid to look past who I am and see the man beneath." He took her hands, warm and steady against her trembling fingers. "I failed you. I doubted you when you needed me most. I let others shape the way I saw you, but I won't do that again. I won't let fear decide my life anymore." Tears welled in Mara's eyes, not from pain this time, but from the unfamiliar weight of finally being chosen. Colton continued, voice rough with sincerity. "My mother trusts you, my heart trusts you, and if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life earning the right to stand beside you." He reached into his coat pocket not for a grand diamond or a dramatic gesture, but for a simple silver band, elegant and understated, the kind of ring meant for a woman who valued meaning over spectacle. Mara's breath trembled. "Colton, you don't have to answer tonight," he said. "You don't have to choose anything but yourself, but I want you to know this. Wherever you go, I will walk with you. Whatever you fear, I will face it with you, and whatever future you want, I'll build it with you." For the first time since her mother died, Mara felt steady-rooted, held, safe. She squeezed his hands, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Then stay," she whispered. "Stay with me." The skyline glowed brighter, as if the whole city exhaled, and under its shimmering light, two lives broken by silence finally found their sound. And just like that, our story comes to an end. But hey, if you are still here with me right now, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a way only you can understand. Maybe it reminded you of a moment when you felt unheard, unseen, or misunderstood. Maybe it made you remember how hard you fought just to stay standing when life pushed you to your knees. Life is messy. It's unfair. It breaks us in places we didn't even know could crack. But like Marcus Aurelius said, what stands in the way becomes the way. Every obstacle, every betrayal, every heartbreak, it's not there to stop us. It's there to shape us, to sharpen us, to reveal the strength we didn't know we had. And healing? It doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up quietly, through someone believing in you, through a moment of courage, or through a story that reminds you that you deserve more than the world ever gave you. If this video made you feel even a little less alone, if it whispered something your heart needed, hit that like button. Share it with someone who could use a bit of light tonight. And make sure you subscribe. Because our little corner here, it's a place for stories that heal, stories that remind us we're stronger than we think. You're not alone, and you deserve every good thing coming your way.